Hi, and thank you so much for joining me today for day 20 of 30 Days of Sketches with Christie's Beautiful Life round 10. And today's sketch is created by Sheri Rubini, and I love it. It's strips of paper, and you know I love strips of paper if you've watched me for any length of time. I'm using the 49 and Market Serenity collection, again to scrap photos of our trip to Lapland earlier on in the kids' lives. So I've pulled out some papers from the 6x8 paper pad. I'm going to be adding mixed media to the background per usual. So I'm just cutting my strips now and working out where they'll go before I start doing the mixed media. So these papers are all pretty similar in tone, but I really love how they don't detract from the photos. The photos are very delicate in a way because there isn't a lot of light in Lapland in December. So most of the photos have a blue hue, even if there is daylight there, it's still pretty dark. So just wanted to choose a collection that wouldn't detract too much from that or add more blue than we already have there. So like I say, just cutting these strips from the various pieces that I've chosen. Some I've just flipped over the papers and used the reverse, and some using fresh papers, and I love that you've got some of these blues in without it being too blue. So once those strips are down, I shall carry on. First of all, I'll distress all of the edges just to add some texture because it's a fairly simple layout. So here they are all distressed, and once I've got the positioning and I'm happy to find the top and bottom, I'll add some pencil marks so that I know where to take my mixed media to and start with that. So here we go, the marks are all down. I'm trying to keep the strips in two sets, one for the top and one for the bottom, so that I don't lose track of what was going where. And now I'm going to come in with my Tim Holtz Distress Oxides. So I start off with some speckled egg, then I'm going to go in with some blueprint sketch, and finally chipped sapphire. These seem to be my go-to blues at the moment, so just watering them down with my water spray. And then I'll start, and watering the card down as well, I'll start creating a massive mess of watercolour. So just blending all the colours in together to create a nice big photo mat. And that's it. So while I leave that to dry, I'm now going to turn my attention to the strips. So first of all, that big fishtail piece in the middle. So I need to create the fishtails first of all. So I do that by cutting straight down the centre of the paper and then joining the corner to the bottom of that cut. And that gives you a nice clean centralised fishtail, and you're not having to bend your paper over. I've done that before and created a crease and I wasn't happy with that, so I find this method a much better method of doing it. Now this piece isn't long enough for my liking, so I'm going to cut it in half so that I can extend it to either side, because the photos will cover that join. So just mopping up some water speckles that I managed to get on the photo there when I was spritzing my card earlier. And then I'm going to mat the photos onto some white tissue paper. It's just the standard tissue paper that we use at Hey Little Magpie to wrap our orders in. I keep it just scrunched up, well, loosely folded in my drawer, and then I can pull it out, and I like the texture that having it scrunched up adds to it. So just popping those down, and then I'll trim around those. Don't want too much of a border, but just something. And big scissors are definitely the easiest thing to use for this job. And once they're trimmed, I can glue them together and add them to the fishtail. So just distressing at the edges of that fishtail so that it matches the rest of the pieces, and then we can start gluing them together. And I'll bring in another 12 by 12 cardstock just so that I can check the width that I'm creating this to. So there we go, it's just a piece of basil texture white cardstock, because obviously I don't want it to be too wide or it won't look right with the other pieces that we've got on the layout. So just checking where the photos are going to go, and then as I say, I'll glue those down, and then that can be stuck down to the fishtail. And I want to make sure that it's straight, so using my T-ruler just to make sure that that happens. So now carefully lifting the pieces up and gluing them down, and then I'll secure the back with a scrap piece of cardstock, just so that if those photos fell apart, it's still nice and secure. So here we go, flipping it over, and then I'll add that strip of cardstock. And now that gorgeous background's dry, look at those colours, we're ready to add the strips back in. So most of it will be covered by these strips, but you will still see it peeking through, and I'm really happy with the overall effect that we've got. So just messing about, positioning all of these strips, and then I will go in with my Nouveau Deluxe adhesive glue. Any PVA glue would work, that's my preference of glue. And I'll stick these down just very carefully through the middle, because I am actually going to stitch them on to add a bit more texture. It's a very simple layout this, so I just wanted to add bits and pieces where I could. So again, just fiddling and faffing, checking that I'm happy with the placement. I was lifting those fishtails up to see the pencil marks to check that it was in the middle of the layout, and that's why I do these pencil marks, so that I've got my guidelines and I don't get carried away. And here we are, just sticking the last strip down before I come in with my sewing machine. I don't bother with the fishtail because obviously I've already got the photos stuck on that, so that won't be stitched, but all the other strips will be. So here I am, just putting them through my machine, just one strip of sewing on each strip, and I cut the ends before going on to the next one. And there it is all stitched, and so I'm just pulling all the threads through to the front this time, and then trimming off the excess threads, again just to add a bit of texture to the layout. It's quite a messy mixed media sort of feel to it, so those thread ends really add to it. So popping this fishtail up onto foam pads, the usual 25mm sticks 2 foam pads on a roll that we sell at Hey Little Magpie, and then I'll stick that down to the layout, and then we can start embellishing. And it's, as I say, a relatively simple layout. There's just some, on the sketch, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there, some clustering at the top left-hand corner and bottom right, and the title underneath the photos. So just lifting up those strips, again, to add texture and dimension. And now I'm going to go through these chipboard pieces to see if there's anything I like in them to add to the layout. And then I spot the laser cuts, and I think really I should go through those first because I want to use some of these bigger pieces. And straight away I see this flower and just know that'll be perfect. At first I think it's going to go on the left hand side, but it actually goes on the right hand side there. You can see it popped in there. And then this other piece is going to go on that left hand side there by the fishtail. So just following the sketch really of where the clusters go, but then adding a few more on the fishtail here. So that just says photographs, and I've used one of the book plates to layer it on top of. And pulling out some of the chipboard hearts as well. So realising I really do need to get this fishtail down. I don't know why that wasn't stuck down before. I think I was worried about doing my clustering, but of course, because this is mounted onto foam pads, it's not really going to get in the way anyway. So just checking that that's in the middle and getting it stuck down, and then I can work on these floral laser cut pieces. They're absolutely gorgeous, these. They're a real statement piece on a layout. So just starting with wet adhesive and then coming in with some foam pads just to stick the pieces. Because the fishtail is on foam pads, I need these pieces to be mounted on foam pads as well. And now that left hand piece is down, I'm going in with the right hand piece and doing exactly the same. So adding foam pads where I know they need to go, using the wet glue to stick it down, and then I'll add some more foam pads where they're needed. And look at the difference that those two pieces make to this layout. They really do frame the photos beautifully and just add so much texture and interest to those fairly boring strips of paper that we've got on there, all very similar tones, very similar looking. So now going in with these chipboard hearts, just to add a little bit of something else. So one at the bottom here, and then sticking down that book plate and the word photographs. Just pop that down like that. And then just trying out a few other pieces. I like this circle, but it doesn't really add anything to the layout, so it doesn't need to be on there this time. And then I find another word strip that says simply the best. So I'm going to stick that just below that photographs piece. Now coming in with my title, these are some really old basic grey alphabet stickers, so we'll have to stick them down with a wet glue just to make sure that they stay there. And this just says reindeer sleigh ride. And just to fill in that gap on the left hand side, I'm using a little butterfly again from the laser cut embellishments. So a couple of chipboard hearts, underneath that Simply the Best title. And then I'm going to come in with some enamel dots just to finish it off. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you do enjoy watching my process videos, I'd love it if you would subscribe to my channel so that you get to see more from me. It really does help me so very much. Do check the description box down below to see everybody else who's joining in on this hop. There's a playlist for you to play to your heart's content, and you'll see everybody there. And that's it. I'll leave you with some close-ups of this layout and a final still, and I shall see you again tomorrow for the next sketch in this series. Thank you so much again. Bye.